Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to episode 351 of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, where we look at mysteries from the twin perspectives of faith and reason. In this episode, we're talking about Immaculate Constellation. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today is Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
In November of 2024, the U.S. House of Representatives held a new round of hearings on UFOs, which are now often called UAPs. One of the key developments this time was the release of an 11-page document that alleges that the Defense Department is running a secret UFO program called Immaculate Constellation. What is Immaculate Constellation? Is it real? When did it form? And what does it do? That's what we'll be talking about on this episode of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. Jimmy, what do we need to know to begin today's mystery?
Well, in 2017, the former Defense Department employee Luis Elizondo quit his job in protest. He had been involved in a couple of UFO or UAP projects that went by names like the Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Application Program, or AAWSAP, and the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or ATIP. We talked about ATIP way back in episode 41 at mysterious.fm/41, so you can listen to that for what was known at the time. Since then, more information has come to light, and we'll be discussing it again in the future. Elizondo felt that he was being stonewalled and prevented from being able to take the measures needed to deal with the UAP problem. Quitting allowed him more liberty in what he could discuss, so he went to the press. And in late 2017, the New York Times published a story about the ATIP program. Also, 3 formerly classified videos were released because Elizondo had managed to get permission for them to be published. The news story, and especially the videos, caused a great deal of new attention to be focused on this issue, and eventually Congress got involved. A number of hearings have been held and laws have been passed. Among other things, a new effort called the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, has been created, and it has been empowered to learn about all previous UFO UAP programs. However, there have been persistent charges that some of these programs have not been properly disclosed and that they have been evading congressional oversight. In October of 2024, journalist Michael Shellenberger of the website public.news revealed that a whistleblower had named a program that was evading oversight. This program was named Immaculate Constellation, and Shellenberger, among others, testified to Congress in November of 2024. In conjunction with his testimony, they also distributed to the House committee copies of an 11-page report written by the whistleblower, which contained information about Immaculate Constellation. According to press accounts I've heard, this report was initially given to someone in Congress, and Shellenberger then learned about it, reported on it, and testified regarding it. This report has now been entered into the congressional record, and Representative Nancy Mace of South Carolina published it on her congressional website. We'll also have a link so that you can read it for yourself, and that's what we'll be talking about this episode.
Then where would you like to start?
I'd like to begin by playing Michael Shellenberger's prepared statement before Congress last November. Typically, when a witness testifies, they start by reading a statement they've prepared in advance, and then they take questions about what they're there to testify on. The prepared statement is rather lengthy. It's about 6 minutes long, but he basically overviews the document as well as providing additional content. This will set us up for reviewing the document itself as well as for some particular questions regarding it. So here we go.
I would now like to recognize Mr. Shellenberger for his introductory remarks. Chairwoman Mace, Chairman Grothman, Ranking Member Connolly, Ranking Member Garcia, members of the subcommittees, thank you for inviting my testimony. One of Congress's most important responsibilities is oversight of the executive branch in general and the military and intelligence community in particular. Unfortunately, there is a growing body of evidence that the U.S. government is not being transparent about what it knows about unidentified anomalous phenomena, and that elements within the military and the IC are in violation of their constitutional duty to notify Congress of their operations. President-elect Donald Trump and former President Barack Obama have both said that the government has information about UAPs that it has not released. There are other explanations for UAPs than that they represent a new form of life or non-human life. Current dominant alternative theories, including those put forward by Arrow, are that UAPs are some kind of natural phenomena we don't yet understand, like ball lightning or plasma. They could also be part of some new U.S. or foreign government weapons programs, such as drones, aircraft, balloons, CGI, hoaxes, or birds. Whatever UAPs are, Congress must be informed, as must the people of the United States. We have a right to know what UAPs are, no matter what they are. However, we now have existing and former U.S. government officials who have told Congress that Arrow and the Pentagon have broken the law by not revealing a significant body of information about UAPs, including military intelligence databases that have evidence of their existence as physical craft. One of those individuals is a current or former U.S. government official acting as a UAP whistleblower. This person has written a report. This is the report that says the executive branch has been managing UAP, NHI issues without congressional knowledge, oversight, or authorization for some time, quite possibly decades. Furthermore, these individuals have revealed the name of an active and highly secretive DoD unacknowledged special access program, or USAP. The source of that document told me, that the USAP is a strategic intelligence program that is part of the U.S. military family of long-standing, highly sensitive programs dealing with various aspects of the UAP problem. The new UAP whistleblower claims that the U.S. military and IC database includes videos and images taken using infrared, forward-looking infrared, full-motion video, and still photography. The report that was just shared with Congress says Immaculate Constellation serves as a central or parent USAP that consolidates observations of UAPs by both tasked and untasked collection platforms. Immaculate Constellation includes high-quality imagery intelligence and measurement and signature intelligence of UAPs, the whistleblower's report adds. The sources of this intelligence are a blend of directed and incidental collection capabilities, positioned in low Earth orbit, the upper atmosphere, as well as military and civilian aviation altitudes and maritime environments. The report to Congress details in detail various UAPs, including spheres, orbs, disks, saucers, ovals, triangles, boomerang, arrowhead, and irregular organic. The report describes various incidents found in the human intelligence databases. One involved orbs surrounding and forcing an F-22 out of its patrol area. In another incident, the crew of a Navy aircraft carrier watched a small orange-red sphere rapidly descend from a high altitude of 100 to 200 yards directly above the flight deck of the CVN, or aircraft carrier. And since my reporting on this Immaculate Constellation last month, another source came forward who told me that they saw a roughly 13-minute-long, high-definition, full-color video of a white orb UAP coming out of the ocean approximately 20 miles off the coast of Kuwait. It was filmed from a helicopter. Then halfway through the video, the person said the orb is joined by another orb that briefly comes into the frame from the left before rapidly moving again out of the frame. The person discovered the video on SIPR, the Secure Internet Protocol Router Network, which the DoD uses to transmit classified information. A leading UAP researcher who utilizes the Freedom of Information Act to find out what the government knows, John Greenwald, told me last year that the U.S. government had been increasingly denying his requests for UAP information. He has been doing FOIA requests for 27 years and has an archive of 3 million pages. The government has for decades denied any interest in UFOs, he told me, but the documents that he has assembled show that behind the scenes it was a completely different story. Contrary to the hopes of many advocates of transparency, the government has been restricting more information since the leak of 3 UAP videos in 2017. The DoD organization Arrow has been labeling many documents with a B7 exemption, which Greenwald says does not make any sense. They're stating that anything Arrow does is involved in law enforcement investigation, which allows Arrow to not release it. Greenwald says that the DoD has denied the existence of a UAP and ATIP-related records on multiple occasions, only to acknowledge them after an appeal was filed. He added that the Naval Air Systems Command in March 2022 stated they found no additional UAP videos. It seemed strange that they had 3 and only those 3, but other requests had been filed by the Black Vault, that's John Greenwald's group, to seek out more places UAPs might be hiding. Then in September 2022, the Navy admitted that the UAP-related videos and photographs existed, but denied the request in full for their release, saying that the requested videos contain sensitive information that are classified and exempt from disclosure. The DoD will deny things on a Monday and then admit to it on a Friday, said Greenwald. He said the government can and does release videos that protect secret methods of capturing it. They fall back on the sensitive platform excuse a lot, he said. However, the on-screen information can be blurred and scrubbed. The metadata can be removed. I'll show you this example here. This is a presentation from the UATP task force. This is completely absurd. It's nuts, this level of censorship, of redaction on a document. It shows the redaction of how many reports they've collected, for how many years. 2 of the 3 potential explanations are blacked out. The Pentagon, the intelligence community is treating us like children. It's time for us to know the truth about this. I think that we can handle it. Thank you very much.
So we'll get into more detail about all this, but one of the key highlights from the clip is the allegation that the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, which is the current Defense Department UFO investigation group tasked with reporting to Congress, and the Pentagon have broken the law which requires them to report to Congress about what they have been finding out about UFOs. This is important because the United States has a military that is supposed to report to its civilian government, and Congress, representing that civilian government, is supposed to have oversight over what the military is doing, because unless you're a military dictatorship, you really don't want your military going off reservation and doing things that the civilian government hasn't authorized. That way lies all kinds of scary futures. Now, not everybody in Congress has to be briefed about every project, but there are at least key people in Congress who need to be notified for proper oversight to occur. In his testimony before Congress, Shellenberger didn't name a specific individual as having failed to do their duty in notifying Congress, but elsewhere he did. Here's a clip with Ross Coulthart from News Nation.
You named Stephanie O'Sullivan, a former Associate Deputy Director of the CIA and Principal Deputy Director of National Intelligence in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and you stated that she was aware of a UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program, but that she had denied its existence to Senator Marco Rubio. Now,
which is illegal. Illegal.
I want to focus on that for a moment because of something I know that I'm not going to discuss in detail here. You've had no reason, have you, to doubt the accuracy of that assertion at all?
None.
The allegation on its face is that an officer of the US government has lied criminally to a senator of the United States.
Yes. A very serious accusation.
It is a very serious accusation, and it's noteworthy because it's not faceless institutions that lie. It's specific individuals. And if they do that, and I'm not personally in a position to know whether Miss O'Sullivan has or hasn't, well, then they need to be held accountable. In any event, in his congressional testimony, the evidence Shellenberger is presenting in support of his claim is a document that was written by an anonymous individual. Shellenberger describes this individual as a, quote, current or former U.S. government official acting as a UAP whistleblower, close quote. And the report contains a number of things which we'll cover. To my mind, the most important of them is the unacknowledged special access program called Immaculate Constellation. A special access program, or SAP, is, as the name suggests, a program that you need special access to know about. This special access goes beyond what is commonly required for access to other classified information. And there are two types of special access programs, acknowledged and unacknowledged ones. If an SAP or SAP is acknowledged, that means that the existence of the program can be publicly disclosed, but the details of the program cannot be because they're classified and you need special access. If a SAP is unacknowledged, that means even the existence of the program can't be publicly disclosed, but the key people in Congress still have to be told about it. The claim is thus that there is an unacknowledged special access program, or USAP, called Immaculate Constellation that the Defense Department is required to notify Congress about, but this has not happened. They've been keeping that information to themselves. Shellenberger also references a gentleman named John Greenwald. He's the founder of a website called the Black Vault, which we'll have a link to. Greenwald files Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA, requests with the government and the Defense Department. And under the Freedom of Information Act, they are supposed to provide the public with declassified versions of the documents in question, sometimes with redactions to protect sensitive information. Many of the FOIA requests that Greenwald files have to do with UFOs, though he also files them on other subjects. And then he posts what he gets back on the Black Vault website. Currently, he has over 3 million pages of declassified documents. Shellenberger reports that Greenwald has been having less luck in getting his requests answered recently. That problem has gotten worse since the 3 UAP videos were released in 2017, and the whole situation appears shady. And the Pentagon looks like it's evading the requirements of the Freedom of Information Act. Now, during the hearing before Congress, 3 other gentlemen also testified, and the members of the committee had the opportunity to ask limited questions of each of them. But here we're going to be focusing on Mr. Shellenberger. So here are several more clips from Shellenberger's testimony, and all of these are much shorter than his opening statement. One thing you may notice about some of the questions he's being asked is that they are rather basic, and you may wonder why they're asking them. A big part of the reason is that the 11-page report had only just been provided to the committee, so they were processing it in real time without having the opportunity to read it previously. And so some of the questions they ask are rather basic. Nevertheless, here are several follow-up questions that Chairwoman Mace asked about Immaculate Constellation.
Okay, Mr. Shellenberger, I'm going to say it again to be very clear. Immaculate Constellation. What's its mission and how are they funded?
Its mission is to, as I stated, its mission is to, it's an unacknowledged special access program. Its mission is to document UAPs.
Okay, and do you, for your story and your report, do you have more than one credible source?
I do.
Sourcing, okay.
I do.
And then why do you believe your sources to be credible? How do you judge the veracity of the documentation you've been provided about this program?
I checked the sources, and they are who they say they are. They are current or former government officials. Mm-hmm. I want to also add that I did not specify that they were Defense Department employees. I didn't specify the agency nor the gender.
Would they have included non-government employees, people that aren't employed by the government?
I'm comfortable saying that these are government or previously government employees.
Any of them currently employed by a private contractor or private contractors?
I'd rather not say.
Okay. What's the key takeaway, just a few seconds, about the Immaculate Constellation document you provided us today?
I think that what the American people need to know is that the U.S. military and intelligence community are sitting on a huge amount of visual and other information, still photos, video photos, other sensor information, and they have for a very long time. And it's not those fuzzy photos and videos that we've been given. There's very clear
high res,
high resolution.
How many visuals, graphics, videos, photos?
I mean, I've been told hundreds, maybe thousands. I mean, I also wanted to say, because there was some conversation concern around the revealing of these materials, revealing the source collections, but some of these are shot from helicopters using normal videos of oceans. I just think that's absurd that somehow you're going to be revealing some secret U.S. technology by revealing that you've photographed orbs off the coast of Kuwait.
Okay.
The key takeaway here is that, per good journalism, Shellenberger didn't just have one source tell him something and then he ran with it. Instead, he has more than one credible source, and he checked the sources to confirm that they were who they said they were. They were current or former government officials, but Shellenberger wouldn't say whether they were part of the Defense Department, what agency they were part of, or what their genders were. He also declined to answer whether they were working for private contractors rather than the government now. He said that we have apparently hundreds, maybe thousands of high-quality videos and other images and information about UFOs, and that some of this material was shot from helicopters using ordinary video equipment. That's important because one of the common reasons for keeping something classified is that even if the material itself shouldn't be classified, you don't want to expose information about our collection platforms and systems to foreign governments because they could then use that information to figure out how to defeat our systems. But there's nothing classified about ordinary video cameras, and there's nothing classified about ordinary helicopters, so there should be no reason to keep those kinds of videos of UFOs secret, yet they're doing so. Now, here are some questions from Representative Glenn Grothman of Wisconsin.
The primary reason you're here today is because you published an article on the news publication that you own called Public, right? Alleging that a new unnamed government whistleblower has come forward asserting that a highly classified program exists dedicated to recovery and reverse engineering of UAP technologies. Can you give us what specific evidence you have or that your source provided you to substantiate the claims about the existence of the Immaculate Constellation program?
Well, you have the report in front of you now, so you can see it for yourself. I checked the report, and I did not find it based on existing cases. It was new cases for me. I hadn't found anybody. So that answered for me that it was not obviously circular reporting, which is one of the big concerns in this space. I also had the name of the program confirmed by more than one additional source. And then I checked to make sure that the source was who they claimed to be.
Okay.
I should also say that when I said before it was this database, it is a much broader program than that. It also includes human intelligence, and then, as you mentioned, the retrieval and the reversal.
Any knowledge of what country these things originated in?
No, I have no idea.
Okay.
One of the key questions that Representative Grothman asked Shellenberger was what evidence he was provided about Immaculate Constellation. And he said that one of the things lending credibility here is that the 11-page document contains new cases. This is significant because there has been a concern that some of the more dramatic claims recently made by whistleblowers are just based on what's called circular reporting. In other words, you have a group of people passing dramatic stories about UFOs around in a circle, and they get repeated as factual even though they can't be traced to a source. They just seem to be based on rumors that are circulated. But Shellenberger notes that the report contains new cases rather than previously reported ones, and that lends credibility to the idea that the report is not just circular reporting. Here's an additional clip from News Nation where journalist Ross Coulthard asks Shellenberger about this.
All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which is the Pentagon's UFO investigation office. It assessed that the, quote, inaccurate claim that the US government is reverse engineering extraterrestrial technology and is hiding it from Congress is, in large part, the result of circular reporting from a group of individuals who believe this to be the case, despite the lack of any evidence.
I think that there is the potential for a significant amount of circular reporting. As a journalist, you're always worried about that. This new whistleblower is not part of that circular reporting. I am confident of that. They also, this person did not know the other individuals who verified the name of this program. So I do believe this, and I have checked the credentials of this whistleblower. They are who they say they are. And so it is not part of that. It does not fit the theory of social contagion. I think the other thing, sorry, go ahead.
No, so I just wanted to double check. Let's talk first about what you can tell me about the credentials of your whistleblower without compromising any of your sources. So clearly you have somebody in Congress who has briefed you on the contents of this whistleblower report, and they've told you who this whistleblower is. Have you been able to speak to that whistleblower yourself?
Yes, I am in direct contact with the whistleblower. I have verified, I've interviewed the person several times. I have verified their credentials and who they are, either in government or as a government contractor. I'm not going to say which, just to keep the universe of potential positions large, as I'm also not revealing their gender or anything else about them to protect them. I'm also comfortable saying that this person discovered this material accidentally. This was not something that they had expected to encounter. They encountered a large body of information that they describe as a database of this information that's available to others in the intelligence community, in the defense community. So there are, we've heard about that these databases must exist, but the allegation here is that there is a significant body of evidence that has not been made available to Congress in violation of the Constitution.
In his testimony to Congress, Shellenberger also said that he got confirmation of Immaculate Constellation from more than one additional source. So, in addition to the whistleblower who wrote the report, Shellenberger had confirmation from a minimum of 2 other sources, which would be among those he told Chairwoman Mace about, that he had checked out and verified their identities. He also said some things that appear to go beyond what the report itself said, which is that Immaculate Constellation isn't just a program that collects imagery intelligence, which means photos and videos collected by satellites and airplanes. Instead, he seems to say that it includes human intelligence, which is information collected from human sources and, person-to-person reports, and that it's also involved in the recovery and reverse engineering of UFOs. Those things are not mentioned explicitly in the 11-page report, so if they're accurate, they represent things that Shellenberger must have learned from other sources. Now, here are questions that were asked by Representative Clay Higgins of Louisiana.
Mr. Shellenberger, were you the author of this report? There's
No, I was
no name
not.
on it.
No.
Do you know the author?
I do.
You do. And how would you estimate that madam or gentleman, the author?
The person is a current or former U.S. government employee.
And it states here that this is the public version of the author's report.
Yes.
So where might one find the non-public version of the author's report?
I don't know the answer to that.
Would that be with the Department of Defense?
I don't know.
But you do know the author.
I do.
You know what the author's sources were?
The author's sources are described in the report. These databases, the Immaculate Constellation.
Right, but you expressed some confidence in the sources.
I would.
Earlier in testimony, you expressed confidence. So do you know those sources?
I do.
Are they within the Department of Defense?
I can't say.
You can't say, or you won't say?
I won't say.
Okay, why not?
Because I protect my sources, and I think the reason.
But you're not naming them. It's a big department. But many of us on my side of the aisle would say it's far too big. So you're talking about the Department of Defense, sources from within the Department of Defense?
I'm not willing to reduce the potential universe of where my sources might be.
Okay, moving on.
So the key thing here is that Representative Higgins tried to get more information about the sources that the report is based on. And Shellenberger said that he knew some of the sources, which would cohere with his statement that he had multiple confirmations of Immaculate Constellation. Higgins then reasonably guesses that if Immaculate Constellation is an unacknowledged SAP, then few people must know about it, and since it's supposed to be a Defense Department program, those sources must also be within the Defense Department. But Shellenberger refuses to identify whether the sources are Defense Department or not, in order to avoid narrowing the universe of where the sources might be, and thus risk giving clues as to who the whistleblowers are. Now, here are some additional questions from Representative Higgins.
Mr. Shellenberger, in this report, it's striking to me that regarding the descriptions of experiences with these various craft, several of them include biological effects and several do not. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay, so spheres and orbs, triangular craft, and irregular or organic craft include some descriptions of biological effects, including feelings of unease, electronic device malfunctions, long-term psychological effects such as anxiety or insomnia have been noted, feeling of being watched, a shared awareness with the triangle craft, and under the irregular and organic craft, biological effects include physical sensations of warmth or cold and unexplained smells and psychological distress. So these are very specific descriptions of the reactions of human beings, which allegedly have been noted from a study here, a report. All of those experiences would have been described by the sources that the author used.
I'm not sure I understand.
This is a very broad description of biological effects, and it's striking to me that they are present with relation to some types of craft, but
right.
absent in others. This would require a great deal of research and study. Can you explain that?
My understanding is that this is the database is very large. It includes both the images, the videos, the still images, as well as the human intelligence, the reports, the raw data from individuals having these experiences. So in answer to your question, yeah, I mean, I think we're looking at a very large amount of data collected over many decades.
And that data is held by the Department of Defense?
Well, I will say that after I published, I was told that this program, that the USAP was actually managed by the Department of Defense but held at the White House.
Roger
but
that.
That's a single source, and I don't have multiple sources to verify that.
Thank you, sir. I did my best to trick an answer out of you, but I was partially successful. Madam Chair, I yield.
Here, Representative Higgins referred to a later section of the report that does not deal with Immaculate Constellation itself. We'll read from this section later in the program, but it reports about various biological and other effects being reported with particular types of UFOs. Some have one set of effects associated with them, while others do not. Higgins notes that figuring this out would require a large amount of data, and Shellenberger agrees that it's his impression the database includes human intelligence collected over many decades. Higgins then takes another stab at finding out where the program is to be located, and Shellenberger says that since his original publication about the program in his newsletter, one source informed him that Immaculate Constellation is managed by the Defense Department but is held at the White House. However, he says that this is only one source and has not been confirmed. Now we have remarks from Representative Lauren Boebert of Colorado, and I have to say that I appreciate her sense of humor, because she notes that they were warned that mentioning the name Immaculate Constellation could get you put on a government watch list. That's a reference to something Shellenberger says he had previously been told.
One of the individuals who confirmed the existence of the Special Access Program told me that simply publishing the name the name Immaculate Constellation would trigger surveillance of me. That it is located, is kept under very tight secrecy in the office of the Secretary of Defense. Obviously, that is a little nerve-wracking.
So Boebert humorously goes all in and names a whole bunch of popular conspiracy ideas, like birds don't exist and all apparent birds are actually government robots, which is a joke conspiracy theory. But she wants to make sure that she's on all the government watch lists, so she names a whole bunch of ideas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now that we have all been cautioned in this committee hearing that the mention of Pentagon's Immaculate Constellation program could put us on a list, well, I already find myself on many lists, I'm sure. So I speak my mind often, so why not just keep going with it? May as well just go all out and say it. The earth is flat. Birds are government drones, and we've never set foot on the moon, and Joe Biden received 81 million votes in the 2020 election. So let's just see how many lists we could get on here today. But Mr. Shellenberger, I wanted to ask you, I think I understand from this hearing that you would agree that classifying information like this is not in the best interest of the people. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, with the caveat that, of course, I would support classification necessary to protect secrets essential to national security, but I think it's pretty obvious that there's overclassification.
Overclassification, yes. And so in most instances, if they can't tell us what, do you think at some point they'll at least tell us why?
President-elect Trump has repeatedly committed to greater transparency, both on the UAP issue, on JFK files, on COVID origins, and many other things. So I think that we need to make sure that the next administration is held accountable for that.
Agreed.
So the key subject here was the problem of overclassification, where the government and military officials just reflexively classify almost everything, whether there's a real need to do so or not. And both Representative Boebert and Mr. Shellenberger expressed the hope that the new Trump administration will keep its promises regarding more transparency on UFOs, JFK files, and COVID origins. Boebert later continued with the following questions about UAPs encountered in the oceans, or what used to be called unidentified submerged objects, or USOs.
Okay, I would like to know, with Immaculate Constellation, how does this relate to UAP activities, Mr. Shellenberg, in oceanic environments? Are there any instances where the Navy or other maritime forces have encountered UAPs that could not be explained by known technology or natural phenomena?
Yeah, the Immaculate Constellation covers both terrestrial and oceanic, and there's actually a number of cases described in the report that occur in the ocean. And
do you believe that there is a concerted effort by the Pentagon to keep Congress out of the loop regarding these UAP activities, specifically in our waters?
Yes.
I think it's about 5% of our ocean that's actually been studied in detail by man, and we've studied more of space than we had of our own oceans. And so are there any accounts of UAPs emerging from or submerging into our water which could indicate a base or presence beneath the ocean's surface?
I don't know about a base, but, as I mentioned, I had a different source entirely describe this pretty extraordinary footage that exists of orbs, of an orb coming out of the ocean and being met by another orb.
Some would say that there's multiple hot spots where we see frequent activity. So in your investigations, have you come across any data or visual evidence like sonar readings or underwater footage of these UAPs?
I have not beyond what's in the report.
You've written about UAPs not only in the air but in underwater. Are there any specifics on what you've learned about the UAP activity in our oceans? Particularly, have you spoken with sources who have provided any evidence or eyewitness accounts of these UAPs interacting with our naval forces or being detected by our underwater surveillance systems?
Nothing beyond what's in the report and then the specific case that I mentioned with the orbs.
So this report says it all. There's no other information that we are aware of regarding the activity within our waters.
I have other sources that have told me that have shared a significant amount of information, but they're not comfortable with me sharing it at this point.
Okay. Are there any technological capabilities observed in these oceanic UAPs that seem to defy our current understanding of physics or our engineering capabilities?
It seems like they all do.
Yes, I would agree with that.
So Boebert got Shellenberger to agree that there is an effort by the Pentagon to keep Congress out of the loop regarding USOs, and she was interested in hotspots that could potentially indicate the presence of an underwater base, but Shellenberger didn't confirm that. However, he did agree that we have evidence of USOs that defy our current understanding of physics. Finally, we have a brief question from Chairwoman Mace.
Real quickly, Mr. Shellenberger, how do we get more whistleblowers to come forward?
Well, this hearing is very important, and obviously, I can't encourage whistleblowers to obtain information, but I can guarantee that I will protect them and go to prison to protect their identities if they come to me.
So hopefully more people will come forward with what they know in the future.
With that as background, let's now turn to the 11-page document that Shellenberger provided to the committee and that Representative Mace published on her congressional website. We're basically going to read through the document, and Jimmy, you'll comment on it. Is there anything we should know before we begin?
Well, apparently it was originally a 12-page report, but the cover sheet has been removed to protect the identity of the author. Also, it's a non-classified version of a longer report that contains classified information, but Shellenberger said in his testimony that he didn't have access to that version. The document is divided into 7 sections, plus an introduction and a conclusion, and the introduction says,
"This document is the result of a multi-year internal investigation into the subjects of unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP, technologies of unknown origin, TUO, and non-human intelligence, NHI. This investigation was undertaken in response to urgent and credible threats to the public good and safety of the United States of America, and provided to Congress through the UAP whistleblower mechanisms established by the Fiscal Year 2023 National Defense Authorization Act and the Fiscal Year 2023 National Intelligence Authorization Act. The data consulted during this investigation and summarized in this report originate from non-public data held within the executive branch of the United States government, USG."
So that would be consistent with what Shellenberger was later told about the Immaculate Constellation program being managed by the Defense Department but held at the White House. The White House is the head of the executive branch, so the report says that it's based on non-public data held within the executive branch.
The author obtained access to this information while pursuing their lawful duties as an employee of the Department of Defense.
This is significant because it identifies the author as an employee of the Defense Department, which means that the data Shellenberger was trying to keep secret about the author is actually in the report. You'll recall that he would only refer to the author as a present or former government employee, but he wouldn't say if the author was part of the Defense Department. So he apparently forgot that the author himself had disclosed this information in the report. And the author discloses that he came across the information while pursuing their lawful duties as an employee, meaning they didn't do anything illegal. And note that it uses the neutral pronoun "their" in their lawful duties, which masks the author's sex.
This public version of the author's report was reviewed and approved for public release by the Department of State, Bureau of Global Public Affairs.
So we're not releasing anything classified in this version, and thus no laws are being broken because the report was approved for public release.
The results of this investigation are deeply disturbing. Elements of the U.S. executive branch have conspired to prevent the U.S. legislative branch from exercising its lawful powers of governance with respect to the UAP, technologies of unknown origin, and non-human intelligence issues. The information provided by the author strongly suggests that the U.S. executive branch has been managing UAP, non-human intelligence issues, without congressional knowledge, oversight, or authorization for some time, quite possibly decades. This criminal conspiracy keeps the elected government of the United States and its citizens ignorant to profound discoveries and dire threats originating from the existence of UAP, non-human intelligence, and their technologies.
This is the main accusation of the report. It says that elements of the executive branch have been conspiring to illegally withhold information from the legislative branch, that is, Congress. The information concerns UFOs and technologies of unknown origin and non-human intelligence. Non-human intelligence included, but not being limited to extraterrestrials. The term would also cover visitors from other dimensions, time travelers, and even hidden races here on Earth, or cryptoterrestrials. So non-human just means non-human. It doesn't mean alien specifically. The executive branch has reportedly been pursuing this subject for possibly as long as decades, and they have made both profound discoveries and identified dire threats.
Unambiguous evidence demonstrating the reality of UAP, non-human intelligence, and technologies of unknown origin has been made available to Congress by multiple independent UAP whistleblowers. This document is but one item of evidence brought to Congress. Much more exists and hopefully will be made available.
The document then explains where the information it's going to report on comes from.
In this public version of the report, information is organized into 7 categories of evidence, including an unacknowledged special access program, USAP, imagery intelligence, IMINT, human intelligence, HUMINT, signals intelligence, SIGINT, United States government bureaucratic records, USG historical records, and other sensitive sources. All information in this report is derived from access to non-public information.
Now we turn to Section 1 of the document. It says,
Section 1. Unacknowledged Special Access Program, Immaculate Constellation. Immaculate Constellation is an unacknowledged special access program, USAP, established following the public disclosure of the ATIP/OSAP programs by Luis Elizondo in 2017.
So this gives us a timeline for Immaculate Constellation. It was founded after Lou Elizondo quit and went public, revealing the existence of the ATIP and OSAP UFO research effort. That could suggest that Immaculate Constellation was formed in response to Elizondo going public, though it doesn't prove that.
Before we go further, let's consider a question that I'm sure has been on some listeners' minds. Why is it called Immaculate Constellation?
Well, this would be a code name, and code names are not meant to tell you anything meaningful about the operation that has them, because you don't want the enemy learning about the nature of your secret project. Like during World War II, the project to build the nuclear bomb was not called the Nuclear Bomb Project. It was called the Manhattan Project. More recently, many classified programs have been known by code names involving 2 unrelated words, and they actually present the project managers with 2 lists of words that have been generated by a computer and let the project manager pick 1 word from each list. But they're not supposed to tell you anything about the project, and you also have to change the code name every few years to keep enemies from learning about the program. For example, the Defense Department Psychic Spying Program, which we discussed in a bunch of episodes like 156 and 157, where I interviewed former psychic spy Paul Smith, it went by a number of names over the years. It was called things like Grill Flame, Center Lane, and eventually Stargate, with each of those words being picked from a different list. Well, apparently, for this project, one of the lists contained the word Immaculate, and the other contained the word Constellation, and whoever was in charge thought that sounded cool because it sounds like Immaculate Conception, which is a reference to the way the Virgin Mary was conceived free from original sin, but it also had the word Constellation in there, which makes it sound outer spacey and thus appropriate for UFOs. So that's likely why the term was picked, though they'll have to change it in a few years anyway, and they may have already changed it now that the whistleblower has revealed its name.
Upon disclosure to Congress, it was determined that this USAP and its collateral information have not been lawfully reported to Congress. Immaculate Constellation's primary mission is collecting imagery intelligence on unidentified aerial phenomenon, UAP, and ARV/RV reproduction vehicles, utilizing tasked and untasked U.S. military intelligence resources.
So after the disclosure to Congress started, it was determined that Immaculate Constellation had not reported what it knew to Congress, despite the mandate to do so. And the document says that the project's primary mission is collecting imagery intelligence from both tasked military intelligence resources, meaning those that are assigned the duty of doing this work, as well as untasked resources, meaning those that are not assigned to do this work but encounter UFOs anyway. The work in question also deals with both UAPs or UFOs and also those that the author refers to as ARV/RV. This is a term of art that needs explanation. The document does not define what these abbreviations mean. It does say that RV means reproduction vehicles, but it doesn't say what ARV means. It turns out that it means alien reproduction vehicle. Back over to News Nation.
The introduction of this term, alien reproduction vehicle, is effectively a reference to craft that are using not using typical propulsion and using something that is more akin to what people call anti-gravity.
So that's the interesting thing. There's two nomenclatures that we need to define in what your whistleblower's told you goes into his report. There's UAP, and that's grey. We just don't know at this moment. But alien reproduction vehicle, I can tell you, is very, very clearly a reference to a vehicle that has been constructed from non-human technology that is being operated presumably by either private aerospace or the United States government.
So Immaculate Constellation is supposed to be collecting image intelligence on UAPs, which may or may not be the product of non-human intelligence. And it also collects it on alien reproduction vehicles or other reproduction vehicles, which would be craft that humans have produced in imitation of UAPs, perhaps by reverse engineering them, which would imply that we have them to reverse engineer, although perhaps based in some other way, like, observing them and trying to figure out how they're doing what they're doing. Now, back over to the anonymous whistleblower.
As part of a network of SAPs linked to non-human intelligence, NHI, and UAP technologies, Immaculate Constellation acts as a nexus for collecting, analyzing, and disseminating intelligence on the activities, capabilities, and locations of anomalous aerospace threats that originate from foreign or unidentified sources. The intelligence within the Immaculate Constellation program primarily consists of high-quality imagery intelligence, IMINT, and collateral measurement and signatures intelligence, MASINT, of UAPs and ARV/RVs within Earth's atmosphere. The collection platforms involved are a blend of tasked and untasked capabilities in low Earth orbit, LEO, the upper atmosphere, military and civilian aviation altitudes, and maritime environments. Immaculate Constellation pays particular attention to anomalous aerospace platforms that have been developed through the study or acquisition of technologies of unknown origin by foreign nations or unknown entities. UAP and ARV/RV signatures and preferred operating areas are known to the program, enabling a degree of strategic awareness and warning. Finally, Immaculate Constellation shows that UAP and ARV/RVs are operating around the globe, often in close proximity to sensitive foreign assets and locations.
For me, the standout items here are that they're using satellites in low Earth orbit to track these things. They're operating around the globe and in close proximity to sensitive foreign assets and locations. And that we've identified some of their preferred operating areas, which goes along with the hotspots that Representative Boebert asked about.
The categorization of Immaculate Constellation as a parent USAP with various child SAPs under its umbrella indicates a high level of compartmentalization and secrecy. In effect, Immaculate Constellation serves as a central or parent USAP that consolidates observations of UAP and ARV activities detected by tasked and untasked collection platforms. Sophisticated internal information security controls are a major part of the Immaculate Constellation program, which enforces compartmentalization by detecting, quarantining, and transferring UAP and RV imagery collection incidents before they are circulated within the military intelligence enterprise.
So Immaculate Constellation is supposed to be a parent USAP with a whole bunch of daughter or child programs under it. And its function is to intercept, quarantine, and route UAP and RV imagery before they can be circulated more broadly in military intelligence. The whistleblower concludes,
in conclusion, Immaculate Constellation shows that the USG is not only aware of UAPs and technologies of unknown origin, but also foreign state efforts to replicate UAP and technologies of unknown origin capabilities. The data within Immaculate Constellation reveals the capacity of the U.S. Armed Services and military intelligence community to detect, track, identify, and engage anomalous transmedium platforms. Immaculate Constellation also demonstrates the extant capability to detect, quarantine, and transfer UAP and RV collection incidents before they are observed and circulated within the military intelligence enterprise, partially explaining why many otherwise cleared members of the military and intelligence community are unaware of UAP activities. Finally, the existence of Immaculate Constellation provides verifiable evidence of the witting participation by elements of the U.S. Armed Services, Defense Civil Service, and the intelligence community in a global surveillance and reconnaissance mission tasked with monitoring UAPs and ARV/RVs.
Transmedium platforms mean craft that can cross between different mediums of travel, like between outer space and the atmosphere, or between the atmosphere and the water of the oceans. And Immaculate Constellation is supposed to be a big part of why more people who have the proper clearances don't know about these UFOs, because Immaculate Constellation is intercepting and quarantining the information. That concludes Section 1 of the report, which is the one that focuses explicitly on Immaculate Constellation. We now begin Section 2 of the report, which deals with image intelligence that the United States government, or USG, has in its possession. It states,
Section 2. USG Imagery Intelligence. The USG maintains imagery intelligence (IMINT) databases accessible to personnel with appropriate security clearances and mission need. These databases are scattered across various organizations and services, leading to a fragmented ownership structure. This dispersion complicates the timely and comprehensive gathering of BENT related to unidentified aerial phenomena. Control over access to these datasets primarily reside with the military intelligence enterprise, the combatant commands, the armed services, and individual program managers. The IMINT collected from datasets available to the DoD and reviewed for this report provide compelling evidence for UAP, which defy prosaic explanations. There is a large number of unique imagery sensors available to the U.S. military and intelligence community, including infrared IR/forward-looking infrared FUR, full motion video FMV, thermal and still photography. The multitude of wavelengths collected by these sensors have captured UAP characteristics that are difficult or impossible to observe with the human eye alone. Subtle atmospheric effects associated with UAPs are visible through the sensors employed by the U.S. military and intelligence agencies, enabling unique analytic techniques. The verifiable chain of custody for UAP IMINT collected by U.S. military assets ensures a high level of confidence in the accuracy and integrity of the data gathered. The following examples are presented.
So despite the fact that the data regarding UAPs is spread throughout different parts of the Defense Department, the whistleblower says that there is compelling evidence for UAPs that defy prosaic explanations. We've got lots of different types of imagery, and this allows the observation of things that you can't see with the naked eye. Also, this imagery is properly sourced, meaning there are chains of custody going back to when, where, and by whom the imagery was captured. It's not like videos showing up on YouTube or pictures showing up on X, where you have no idea where they came from or whether they were subject to image manipulation. The report then provides 9 examples of UAP that good imagery intelligence has been captured for. The first one comes from CENTCOM, which is one of the 11 unified combatant commands run by the Defense Department. CENTCOM, or Central Command, basically has responsibility for operations in the Middle East. So that's the part of the world where this UAP encounter happened.
CENTCOM cuboid formation of metallic orbs. On USG networks, there exists daytime full-motion video and daytime forward-looking infrared footage of a formation of approximately 12 metallic orbs skimming the ocean surface at high speed before dispersing in multiple directions. The rapid and agile maneuvering of the metallic orbs were incompatible with known aerospace vehicles and were between 3 to 6 meters in diameter. In the opening segment of this footage, the approximately 12 metallic orbs flew in a tight cuboid formation. The metallic orbs were in 3 vertical square formations of approximately 4 orbs each, arranged in a 3-pronged configuration, creating the illusion of a cube shape at distance. All the orbs were white hot against the black, cold ocean in the forward-looking infrared footage, and each sphere created a faint atmospheric distortion both around itself and as a heat shimmer contrail. The metallic orbs moved in this cube formation over the ocean for some time, before rapidly breaking formation as pairs. The sensor platform lost track of most of the metallic orbs as they ascended in altitude and accelerated in speed, but maintained observation on a pair of metallic orbs, continuing the original trajectory of the larger formation.
So in this case, we had a formation of about 12 metallic orbs, each 3 to 6 meters in diameter. That's 10 to 20 feet. So pretty large orbs, and they were very hot compared to the temperature of the ocean that was being filmed in infrared in the background. They were flying in a formation shaped like a cube, but they then broke into pairs, and most disappeared from what the sensor platform could track as they ascended higher and also accelerated. Now, here's a second encounter, which is also from CENTCOM.
CENTCOM Fast Mover observed transiting over sensitive facilities. On USG networks, there exists forward-looking infrared footage of a small to medium oval UAP flying at high speed and low to the surface. The footage begins as routine surveillance of a sensitive coastal facility, when the oval UAP rapidly comes into frame as it flies above coastal facilities. The oval UAP then makes a rapid turn towards the ocean, where it is tracked by the collection platform. The oval UAP is tracked flying low over the open ocean at high speed before the track is lost.
So in this case, a single oval-shaped craft is moving at high speed. Since it's an oval, it's not a conventional aircraft because it doesn't have wings. Based on its shape, it could be a balloon, but the motion at high speed rules that out, since balloons are slow and only move at the speed of the wind. Our third encounter comes from INDOPACOM. This is the Indo-Pacific Command, which, as the name suggests, covers India and the Pacific. It also covers Antarctica.
INDOPACOM intelligence vessels positioned to collect on reproduction vehicle. On USG networks, there exists infrared footage of and imagery of a grouping of vessels engaged in signals intelligence and measurement and signature intelligence collection at night in a specific area of the Pacific Ocean. In this footage, which was in close proximity to the vessels, a large equilateral triangle UAP suddenly appears directly over the ships. 3 bright points are seen at each bottom corner of the UAP, which is observed to slowly rotate on its horizontal axis. This rotation partially reveals a horizontal bar of sweeping lights. Intelligence analysis associated with this event specifies that the equilateral triangle is a reproduction vehicle, RV, and concludes that the vessels must have been aware of the RV's frequent use of those coordinates due to foreign prepositioning of advanced collection assets at the exact time and place. After a brief period of hovering and slowly rotating approximately 500 to 1,000 meters above the ocean, the RV suddenly disappears, and the footage ends.
So in this case, a large triangular UAP suddenly appears over a group of foreign surface vessels collecting intelligence. The UAP is 500 to 1,000 meters up in the air, so that's about 1,500 to 3,000 feet. It rotates slowly, and then it suddenly disappears. The sudden appearance and disappearance are not standard behaviors for conventional aircraft, nor is the slow rotation on its horizontal axis. I have a question about this rotation because they say it takes place on the craft's horizontal axis, which is the way a Ferris wheel rotates. They have a horizontal axis that cuts through them, and then they rotate on that. This generates what is known in flight dynamics as pitch. But the report also says that this rotation partly revealed a horizontal bar of sweeping lights. And if this thing was rotating like a Ferris wheel, you could see the whole thing and wouldn't need the rotation to see the bar of lights. So I think what they may mean is that the object rotated in the horizontal plane, generating what's known in flight dynamics as yaw. Or maybe they meant that it was rotating along its transverse horizontal axis, generating what's known in flight dynamics as roll. Frankly, I wish they just used the standard terms roll, pitch, and yaw, because as phrased, this is ambiguous. But slow rotation is not normal behavior for a hovering conventional aircraft. Despite these unusual characteristics, the report says that analysts concluded that this was a reproduction vehicle, meaning made by humans, and that the surface ships were prepositioned to observe it. If so, the sudden appearance and disappearance would indicate that we've been able to construct some pretty amazing technologies. Our next encounter also comes from Indopacom.
Indo-PACOM Equilateral Triangle UAP tails unwitting vessel. On USG networks, there exists infrared footage of an equilateral triangle UAP, approximately fighter jet sized, hovering less than 200 meters above a vessel, in the night at a location in the Pacific. Intelligence analysis associated with this event specifies that the equilateral triangle is an ARV/RV of unknown origin. The vessel gives no signs that it is aware of the ARV/RV maintaining altitude and bearing directly overhead. Two lights on the underside of the ARV/RV are visible, while a third is blocked from view due to a slightly upward angle of orientation.
Here, they also say that the craft is an alien reproduction vehicle or reproduction vehicle. I wish I knew how they had determined that. In this case, the craft is the size of a fighter jet and it's an equilateral triangle. It also hovers less than 200 meters or 650 feet above the surface vessel, which doesn't know it's there. And hovering is not a standard behavior for a fighter jet, although the Lockheed Martin F-35B Lightning II does have that capability. Now, here's another encounter from Indopacom. This one involves satellite footage of a UFO below it.
Indo-PACOM large disk using clouds as concealment. On USG networks, there exists overhead persistent infrared footage of a large saucer-shaped UAP emerging from within a dense cloud formation. The saucer registered black hot against white cold, with atmospheric disturbances caused by the saucer-shaped UAP visible. The saucer was between 200 to 400 meters in circumference and displayed symmetrical concavities on the upper surface. The saucer-shaped UAP emerges at a shallow angle, traveling upwards towards the outer atmosphere. After breaking above the cloud cover, the saucer-shaped UAP suddenly reverses its direction, descending partially back into the cloud cover, then accelerating rapidly out of frame and partially obscured by the cloud tops. This behavior was evasive in nature, and implied that the saucer-shaped UAP had become aware that it was under observation by a space-based collection platform.
So in this case, the saucer was about 300 meters in diameter. That's about 1,000 feet wide. And it was hot compared to the clouds it was in, and it caused atmospheric disturbances, presumably in the clouds. It started to leave, but apparently spotting the satellite above it, then ducked back into the clouds and used the clouds for cover as it accelerated rapidly away. Needless to say, 1,000-foot wide saucers are not a recognized type of conventional aircraft. And now for our final encounter from Indopacom.
Indo-PACOM Boomerang UAP observed by pilot and sensor suite. On USG networks, there exists forward-looking infrared footage of a swept Boomerang UAP maneuvering at an uncertain altitude at a location off the eastern coast of a country. The UAP is tracked against clouds by the sensor suite of the operating craft. The UAP is observed rapidly decelerating to a stationary hover, followed by the sudden emission of a sphere of light from the junction of the two wings, which expands to partially engulf the craft in a rotating sphere of light, at which point the available footage ends.
In this case, we have a military pilot capturing footage and sensor data about a boomerang-shaped UFO. The UFO descends rapidly, then hovers, emits a sphere of light from the intersection or center of the boomerang. They say that the sphere partially engulfs the craft, though apparently some of the two wings were still sticking out of the sphere of light. And they say that the sphere of light rotated. So apparently it wasn't just a seamless ball of light, but something you could observe the rotation of. Now we come to an encounter in a new territory, Northcom. Northcom is basically responsible for operations in and around North America. This encounter also involves a different type of UFO that you don't often hear about. They're sometimes referred to as irregular or organic in shape, and shapes in this category are reported to look kind of like flying jellyfish or flying brains. In other words, irregular structures whose silhouettes look like something organic or biological, even if they're made of metals or other solid materials.
Northcom jellyfish UAP crosses U.S.-Mexico border. On USG networks, there exists forward-looking infrared footage of an irregularly shaped UAP flying across the southern border. The UAP appeared in forward-looking infrared to be mottled irregularly with hot/cold emissions and approximated a jellyfish or floating brain with hanging appendages in appearance. The UAP flew against the wind with no visible means of propulsion, maintained an unnatural rigidity in its movements and flight path, and maintained a comparatively low altitude to geographic features. In appearance and behavior, footage of this UAP violating the airspace of the southern border resembled the same class of UAPs observed near DoD facilities in Iraq and Afghanistan. There exists at least one compilation video of this class of UAP, sourced from DoD force protection assets and theater intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, which uses this footage as a point of comparison.
The key thing to note here is that the UFO flies against the wind, which would mean that it's not a balloon or group of balloons, since they travel with the wind, not against it. Our next to last encounter also comes from Northcom. This one involves a range fouler, that is, an activity or craft that interrupts a pre-planned military activity, like an unauthorized craft suddenly coming into the range where a training exercise is taking place, and thus keeping the range from being used for its intended purpose or fouling the range.
Northcom Supersonic Range Fouler intercepts USN fighter. On USG networks, there exists forward-looking infrared footage and radar data of a supersonic UAP of uncertain characteristics conducting a head-on intercept of a United States Navy fighter operating off the eastern seaboard. The UAP is observed emerging from a cloud bank at high speed and approaching the U.S. Navy aircraft head-on, rapidly passing over the left side of the cockpit. Radar data from this approach tracks the UAP on its approach towards the craft, providing information on speed, heading, and elevation.
So in this case, the range-fouling UFO emerged from a cloud bank and then did a head-on intercept of a Navy fighter plane, like playing chicken with a couple of ground vehicles, only this time in the air and traveling at supersonic velocities, meaning faster than the speed of sound, or 767 miles per hour. And we got camera footage and radar data on it as it did this. Our final encounter comes from Southcom, which is basically responsible for operations in South America. And this encounter involved a Tic Tac shaped UFO, like the one in the famous Nimitz encounter off the coast of San Diego in 2004.
Southcom Tic Tac detected by space asset in proximity of vessel. On USG networks, there exists overhead persistent infrared imagery and measurement and signature intelligence of a Tic Tac UAP transiting through an area of the Atlantic Ocean. The Tic Tac maneuvers at an altitude at or near local cloud cover, and correlated electromagnetic signatures were collected by measurement and signature intelligence. In the available footage, the Tic Tac UAP transits rapidly through the field of regard as it transits the ocean. No observed reaction is seen to come from the vessel, but its proximity in time and space to the trajectory of this UAP suggests foreknowledge of the UAP event by intelligence.
So here they were using an overhead satellite to observe a Tic Tac UFO, and they also captured some electronic signatures from it, which were apparently captured by a ship on the surface of the ocean. The author states that the fact the ship was there and moving in the same direction as the overhead UFO suggested military intelligence had foreknowledge of where the UFO would appear.
And that brings to a close Section 2 of the report. And before we move on to the remaining sections, I'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make this show possible, including Donna P., Josephina V., Michael F., Glenn C., and John P. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World is also brought to you by DeliverContacts.com, offering top brand contact lenses at always low prices with free delivery. Visit DeliverContacts.com. And by The Grady Group, a Catholic company bringing financial clarity to their clients across the United States, using safe money options to produce reasonable rates of return for their clients. Learn more at GradyGroupInc.com. Jimmy, we now turn to Section 3, which deals with human intelligence, or HUMINT, from people within the defense sector.
That means reports filed by people working in the U.S. military or the militaries of other nations. This part of the report begins...
Section 3. Defense Human Intelligence Reporting. The USG maintains a database of intelligence collected by military personnel across a plethora of topics, including UAP. These individual reports are considered raw because they have not undergone evaluation, corroboration, or contextualization into a finished analytical product by military intelligence community analysts. A significant volume of reports documenting first-hand encounters with unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, or unidentified flying objects, UFOs, by DoD personnel exists within defense human databases. Many of these UAP reports are filed by military aviators and pilots, as well as service members trained in foreign military intelligence collection activities, and often include photographic evidence and sensor data. When aggregated, these reports reveal significant information on UAP. This section is directly informed by reviewing over 400 defense human reports on encounters with UAPs/UFOs by USG personnel spanning from 1991 to 2022. It must be noted that this dataset is not exhaustive. Other human data sources exist which are omitted from this analysis. The defense human dataset summarized here highlights notable trends in the reporting stream and are presented here along with specific examples.
So this section is based on reviewing 400 human reports filed during a 31-year period between 1991 and 2022. The first part of this section deals with commonly observed UFO shapes. And by the way, take note of these shapes because we'll be discussing them in an upcoming future episode, as well as the other extraordinary so-called observables that UFOs display and the kind of technology that might be responsible for them. The section on the UFO shapes states,
Common UAP/UFO shapes observed in Defense Human Dataset. From 1991 to 2022, the most common UAP shapes reported in this USG dataset were spheres/orbs, discs/saucers, ovals/Tic Tacs, triangles, boomerang/arrowhead, and irregular/organic. The triangles/boomerangs/arrowhead shapes were by far the rarest, and spheres the most common. Variations of morphology within these categories are present, i.e. smooth spheres and spheres with protuberances, saucers without domes and saucers with domes, smooth ovals and ovals with surface structures, jellyfish or floating brains with appendages, and elongated triangles as well as equilateral triangles.
So these are just the basic types of shapes, but they do occur with variations. The segment then goes through the shapes and comments on them in more detail. The following section then has a table briefly listing common characteristics of these shapes, but Tables don't read like narrative text, so I'm going to combine the first two parts of this section. We'll be reading from the first part, and then I'll be summarizing that as well as information from the second part that contains the tables.
Sphere or orb. Spheres were the most reported shape, with variations ranging from smooth, featureless orbs to spheres with visible openings or appendages. These objects' prevalence suggests a possible standard in UAP design or function, capable of high maneuverability and speed. The diversity within the sphere category, spanning from simple, polished appearances to more complex structures with appendages, suggests a broad range of purposes or technologies unique to the platform's mission and/or the originator.
So spheres were the most commonly reported shape. You're more likely to see a spherical UFO than anything else. They occur with variations, and at least historically, spheres have not been a standard shape among conventional aircraft, unless you're looking at a balloon. But balloons move slowly, fly with the wind, and distort in shape, so they're seldom perfectly spherical. The next segment, which contains the tables, says that this shape ranges from small objects to several meters in diameter. It says they're capable of hovering and rapid acceleration, and that they've been observed moving faster than conventional aircraft. The table says that the spheres often lack conventional signatures like heat trails, and they have had electronic effects on military equipment. These come in a variety of colors, with gray/metallic, grayish blue, white/white yellow, and red/orange red being prevalent. They can be completely smooth and reflective, but they can also have appendages and openings. They are said to be highly maneuverable and can abruptly change directions. They may fly in geometrical formations and operate in tandem. They occasionally disturb cloud formations and leave contrails that are described as being like heat waves. People who have been close to them report feelings of unease, which isn't surprising because it would be freaky to see one. And because even conventional technology can make you feel uneasy, like if you were standing near a vibrating, sucking jet engine. So I don't know that these feelings of unease are significant, though spheres are also reported to cause electrical devices to malfunction.
Disc or saucer. Saucer-shaped UAPs, reported with and without domes, were the second most common shape reported. Flat saucers were reported as well, these being disc-like objects without pronounced domes. Traditional biconvex UAPs were also reported in the data.
So discs or saucers with or without domes were the second most commonly reported shapes. Some of these were flat, like a pancake with a pronounced dome on top, while others were curved, like the lens of your eyeball. According to the tables, the discs generally ranged from a few meters to over 20 meters in diameter. So that's, say, from 10 feet to over 65 feet in diameter. They can hover, fly at high speeds, and may have sudden bursts of acceleration. Visual sightings are the most common, though they can't sometimes be seen on radar, and some reports include them making a humming sound, though they're often silent. They are commonly metallic silver or gray in color, though sometimes they are reported as emitting light or changing color. They can make sudden vertical ascents, and some reports indicate that they can become invisible or blend into the sky. They sometimes cause electromagnetic interference with nearby devices and vehicles, and some reports indicate that they can have atmospheric effects like causing shimmer in air or sudden fog formations.
Oval or Tic Tac. Oval-shaped UAPs were infrequently reported within the dataset, and only after approximately 2003. These UAPs either maintained a uniform egg-like symmetry, occasionally tapered into a teardrop shape. Cylinders with convex ends, Tic Tacs, fall into this category, and occasionally featured visible protuberances on the top or bottom of the otherwise uniform planform.
So it's interesting that this shape, which isn't very common, only started being reported in 2003, meaning that the 2004 Nimitz encounter off San Diego was one of the earliest. Apparently, these are a new design, or at least one that is new to common use here on Earth. Some of these shapes are symmetrical ovals, kind of like eggs, although eggs aren't perfectly symmetrical, while others were extended with a cylindrical center body and rounded ends, like the famous Tic Tac. They also have occasional small shapes attached to their tops or bottoms. The tables indicate that the ovals or Tic Tacs can be from 6 to 40 meters in length. That's 20 feet to 130 feet long. They frequently travel at high speeds and can instantly accelerate without a sonic boom happening. They don't produce contrails. They are reported to maintain stable positions despite high winds. They generally have a smooth surface, though there are reports of protuberances that could be sensors, propulsion elements, weapons, or unknown technology.
Triangle. Triangles were among the rarest UAPs reported in the data. Most of these sightings were equilateral triangles, occasionally with vertical stabilizers visible on the top of the UAP. Elongated isosceles types were also reported, occasionally with the same vertical stabilizers observed on the equilateral type.
So these are quite rare among UFOs, which is a little surprising to me because I've long suspected that many of the triangular UFOs are actually human-built stealth aircraft, like the Lockheed Martin F-22 stealth fighter, which could be described as an elongated isosceles triangle, or the Northrop B-2 stealth bomber, which could be described as an equilateral triangle. Other nations also have triangular stealth fighters, like the Chinese J-36 fighter. And stealth aircraft are often dark in color, so anytime I hear black triangles, I assume it's a human-made stealth aircraft, unless there is something really bizarre reported about it. The tables say that these are medium to large in size, and it gives examples ranging from the size of an F-16 fighter to the size of a football field. F-16s are basically 50 feet long, and football fields are 360 feet long. So the triangles can be anything from around 50 to around 360 feet long. They're capable of moving very slowly or of rapid acceleration and of flying at speeds above those of conventional aircraft. They're often reported to emit a soft humming sound and may affect nearby electronic devices. They are said to be black or dark gray, and they sometimes have white lights at the corners and a central red light in the middle of the body. There are also reports of what look like stars twinkling across their surface. Some have been described as having visible surface textures like panels or ridges, and some have been said to have stabilizers, meaning, like the kind of stabilizers you see on airplane wings and stuff. They are reported to hover and sometimes fly silently, and they suddenly vanish or accelerate quickly. They're reported to emit focused beams of light, like searchlights, I guess, and sometimes before they accelerate or disappear, they're reported to have toroidal light patterns emanating from their central point. That means, because of what a toroid is, it's a donut shape, so these are donut-shaped light patterns. People who've seen them sometimes report having long-term anxiety, insomnia, or feeling like they're being watched, none of which particularly surprises me due to the weirdness of seeing something you don't know how to identify. And some have reported a feeling of shared awareness with the triangle UFO, which on its face, it suggests a form of telepathic contact, but in the absence of gaining veridical information through that link, it could just be imagination.
Boomerang or arrowhead. Boomerangs and arrowhead-shaped UAPs were also among the rarest reported. The boomerang UAPs exhibited bilateral symmetry, with sweeping wings and a high aspect ratio. Arrowhead UAPs also showed bilateral symmetry, but possessed tapered wings and a low aspect ratio, typically with highly swept leading edges.
These shapes are also rare. The boomerang shape was reported in the 1997 Phoenix Lights incident that we discussed way back in episode 30 at mysterious.fm/30. I also have suspicions that boomerangs and arrowheads shaped UFOs may well be human-designed craft, like classified test vehicles, though if they're reported to do things that are way beyond what conventional aircraft can do, other options have to be considered. In the tables, it says that their wingspans can exceed 30 meters or 100 feet for the boomerangs, and that arrowheads are about the size of an F-16 or a little bigger, so 50 feet or a little bigger. They are reported to glide at slow speeds and fly in at high speeds. They are often reported to move slowly and silently. They are dark and can blend in with the night sky, but sometimes they're reported to have glow in edges or tips. The boomerangs are reported to have smooth aerodynamic surfaces, with the arrowheads having more angular features. They are reported to be able to execute tight turns while flying, and they sometimes are reported to emit a ball of light from their centers that partially envelops the UFO and causes electromagnetic interference with technology.
Irregular or organic. Irregularly shaped UAPs, those that defy simple geometric description, were among the rarest reported sightings. Shape-shifting UAPs also appear in the dataset, typically having a spherical or disc-like base form from which irregular geometries are seen to project. Floating brain or jellyfish UAPs are present as well, characterized by a central mass from which multiple arms or spars hang downward.
These are also rare shapes, and they are difficult to classify due to their unusual silhouettes and because they're reported sometimes to shift between different shapes. That could suggest that they are balloons or clusters of balloons, but not if they fly against the wind or do other things that balloons don't. The tables report that these are highly variable in size, from small and compact to large and sprawling. They are reported to drift slowly, to accelerate rapidly, and this can change unpredictably. They may also cause electromagnetic effects. They are often described as having bioluminescent qualities and to change color. This is particularly the case for floating brain or jellyfish types, which can display patterns of light or fluctuating lights and colors. These tend to be visible in the higher end of the electromagnetic spectrum, which, if they mean visible light, would be the blue and purple end of the spectrum. They're reported to move either in a controlled or an erratic way and are sometimes reported to change shape. People who have been near them report physical sensations of warmth, cold, unusual smells like ozone, and psychological distress, none of which are particularly surprising if these are strange technologies. The non-table segment of this part of the report then closes by stating,
Finally, combined shapes were also observed, including cubes within spheres, ringed saucers, and various rectangular and cuboid forms.
Section 3 of the report then closes with 3 examples of reports gathered from human intelligence among defense employees. The first example involves a crew on the flight deck of a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, or CVN. CVN means nuclear-powered aircraft carrier.
Close encounter by CVN flight deck personnel. While on active duty in the Pacific, flight deck personnel working night duty experienced a close encounter with a spherical UAP of medium to large size. On-duty flight deck crew observed a small orange-red sphere maneuvering at high altitude above the CVN. Shortly after a first observation, the UAP rapidly descended from high altitude to a position directly above the flight deck of the CVN, height approximately 100 to 200 yards. The UAP maintained altitude and matched speed with the underway CVN for an uncertain period. Observing personnel reported altered perceptions of time during the close encounter. The UAP appeared to emit a soft orange-red light which, bizarrely, did not illuminate the ocean or the flight deck of the CVN, despite the visual appearance of intense luminosity. The surface of the UAP was observed to be dynamic, roiling like the surface of the sun. The UAP took no reported actions during the encounter, only maintaining a close-in proximity to the CVN. After an uncertain period, the UAP suddenly shot into the air, disappearing at a point high above the CVN. Observing personnel felt as if they had snapped out of a trance and sense of profound unease. The incident report concludes with noting that the CVN had not responded in any way to what was perceived as a hostile interception by the UAP.
So here, an orange-red sphere appeared 150 feet above the deck of a nuclear aircraft carrier one night and matched its speed. The size of the sphere is not clear. At one point, the summary refers to it as medium-large in size, but in the next sentence, it refers to it as small in size. It appears to be very bright, but was not noticed to cast light on the ocean or the flight deck, which I would guess was an optical illusion caused by the brightness of the light source they were looking at in the dark and the way the human eye reacts to all that. The light source was dynamic and reminded people of the way the surface of the sun roils in photographs of it. Everybody stared at it for a while, and then it shot up in the air and disappeared. Afterwards, people felt like they snapped out of a trance and had altered perceptions of time, which could be due to the intense concentration of focusing on such a strange thing. They also reported a feeling of profound unease, which could also be due to seeing such a strange thing. The second example is one which occurred in the contiguous United States, meaning the lower 48 states. The encounter happened in the Eastern Air Defense Sector, which is basically the east coast of the U.S.
Metallic orbs intercept F-22 on contiguous United States air surveillance and control mission. While performing a routine airspace surveillance and control mission in the Eastern Air Defense Sector, an F-22 fighter observed multiple UAP contacts at mission altitude. Moving to intercept, the F-22 pilot noted multiple metallic orbs, slightly smaller than a sedan, hovering in place. Upon vectoring towards the UAPs, a smaller formation of the metallic orbs accelerated at rapid speed towards the F-22, which was unable to establish radar locks on the presumed hostile UAPs. The F-22 broke trajectory and attempted to evade, but was intercepted and boxed in by approximately 3 to 6 UAPs. One UAP maneuvered in proximity, greater than 12 meters, to the area directly starboard of the cockpit. There, the UAP established a rigid spatial relationship with the F-22, maintaining its exact position and orientation parallel with the F-22's cockpit, despite multiple evasive rolls and maneuvers. Surrounded by the presumed hostile UAPs, the F-22 was forced out of the mission area under the escort of the UAP formation.
So a fighter pilot is doing a routine surveillance and control mission in the airspace above the eastern seaboard when he sees a bunch of car-sized metallic orbs hovering in place. He flies towards them, and a small group of 3 to 6 spheres break off from the formation and surround his plane. He can't achieve radar locks on these, and one of them establishes a position over 12 meters or 40 feet from his right cockpit, and it maintains that position relative to him no matter what evasive rolls and maneuvers he does. It just stays there in the same position off his right cockpit, mirroring the flight maneuvers he's making. He assumes that the spheres are hostile since they aren't supposed to be here, and since they're doing what look like dominance maneuvers, dominance displays, around his plane by matching and mirroring it. Unable to shake the spheres, he lets them escort him out of his mission area, thus foiling his scheduled patrol of the area. Now, finally, here's the third UFO encounter that the section describes.
Perimeter of sensitive facility breached by UAP. At a military airfield located on the eastern seaboard, ground personnel reported a lengthy, low-altitude intrusion late at night by a small, spherical UAP. The UAP displayed visual signature management, appearing as a blurry sphere around which light was distorted or bent. This effect emanated outward from the central sphere, giving the appearance of a heat haze or misty volume of distorted light. Ground personnel reported eye strain, headaches, and a feeling of unease or dread while observing this dark sphere. The UAP was first observed while slowly crossing the runway, moving in the direction of a sensitive area. Once across, the UAP hovered above a grouping of ground equipment before floating further towards a building within the sensitive area. The UAP then floated over the building before suddenly disappearing. Ground personnel were uncertain of the length of the encounter, but estimated their observation lasted between 10 to 15 minutes.
So here we have a nighttime appearance of another sphere. This one seems blurry, like there's light bending around it, and it takes about 10-15 minutes to cross a runway, go into a sensitive area of the military airfield, and float over to a building that's in this area before suddenly disappearing. Those who saw it reported eye strain and headaches, which could be caused by concentrating on the blurry object. They also reported a feeling of unease or dread, which could be due to natural factors, either psychological or physiological. But one way or another, this represented something that shouldn't be intruding into the airspace over a military base.
We now come to Section 4 of the report.
It deals with records maintained by the Defense Department bureaucracy, and it says,
Section 4. DoD Bureaucratic Records. Discrepancies found throughout the internal records of AARO and DoD interactions with Congress cast serious doubts on the integrity of the DoD's statements to the elected leaders of the United States government. Extant transcripts held by DoD leadership show a pattern of trivialization, obfuscation, and outright denial of UAP data in what were intended to be highly classified, private, and transparent conversations with appropriate congressional members. This same behavior also prevents critical members of Congress from receiving an accurate assessment of the national security risks posed by UAPs. Specific examples known to the author include denying the existence of multiple compartmented access programs, CAPs, owned by a military intelligence agency which directly related to the UAP mission. Denying the existence of joint DoD and interdepartment special access programs directly related to the UAP mission and the study of technologies of unknown origin. And finally, the denial of the existence of Immaculate Constellation by DoD representatives to appropriate congressional members and their staff. Separately, additional internal records confirm the claims of Mr. Luis Elizondo regarding ATIP/OSAP's mission, activities, and findings. Additional documents support the exceptional character and credibility of Mr. Elizondo. These non-public records include letters of commendation, service award nominations, performance and promotion reviews, archived email chains, and ATIP/OSAP program briefings which directly corroborate the public statements of Mr. Elizondo. These records also provide additional insight into the activities of ATIP/OSAP, the evolution of the program's findings, and its interactions with senior DoD leadership. Finally, these records provide insight into highly classified and suppressed areas of scientific research and technology development, derived from the study and exploitation of UAP and non-human intelligence technologies.
So this is basically an indictment of the Defense Department and its AARO program for not acting with integrity with respect to their duty to brief Congress, of trivializing this area and failing to give Congress an accurate assessment of the national security risks created by UFOs. The author says that they have falsely denied the existence of multiple compartmentalized access programs on UFOs that belong to a military intelligence agency, which would presumably be the Air Force Office of Special Investigations or possibly its equivalent in the Navy. They've also falsely denied interdepartmental special access programs on UFOs and unknown technologies. They falsely denied the existence of Immaculate Constellation to Congress, and they falsely smeared Luis Elizondo, though the internal records that the author has found confirm Elizondo's account of things, as well as attesting to his personal integrity.
We now come to the 5th section of the report.
It deals with restricted government historical records, and it says,
Section 5. Restricted USG Historical Records. G/00/162-78. This serial number corresponds to an official NSA report published in 1978. The existence and content of this report was verified by accessing the appropriate intelligence archives. The substance of the report concerns scientific research in the Soviet Union on the topics of parapsychology, PSI, and biological effects of UAPs on human beings. Additionally, the existence of this reporting stream demonstrates that U.S. intelligence was explicitly tasked to collect on foreign entities active in areas often related to the fringes of scientific research, including parapsychology and the biological effects of encounters with UAP. The fact that significant intelligence resources were dedicated to understanding and exploiting information related to UAPs and non-human intelligences highlights a strategic commitment to understanding the full scope of UAP, non-human intelligences, and technologies of unknown origin. These and other classified accounts provide a rare public glimpse and reveal the contours of a secretive, decades-long competition between major terrestrial powers to collect, exploit, and field novel technologies derived from the study of UAP and non-human intelligences.
So this basically says that the author found and verified an NSA or National Security Agency report from 1978 that described parapsychological research done by the Soviet Union, which we can talk about in a future episode, as well as the biological effects of UFOs on humans. Basically, this illustrates that U.S. intelligence has been interested in these subjects, as have our adversaries.
We now come to Section 6 of the report.
It deals with signals intelligence, which deals with intelligence collected from radio messages, phone conversations, emails, radar, and other electronic signals. This part of the report says,
Section 6. Signals intelligence. A substantial body of sensitive signals intelligence collected from peer and near-peer countries demonstrate foreign awareness of UAP events occurring over their sensitive military and intelligence facilities, including nuclear weapons facilities. Due to the exceptionally sensitive nature of the sources and methods involved, only general conclusions are provided here. Foreign countries are known to have observed UAPs whose signatures and behaviors correlate to those observed by the United States. These UAP events are treated by the security apparatuses of each state as serious national security threats due to UAP in proximity to sensitive military and intelligence facilities. These facilities are most often associated with aerospace defense, strategic deterrence, and military-sponsored scientific research and development. On multiple occasions, each of these nations have attempted to intercept and shoot down UAPs violating their territorial airspace and the airspace over sensitive facilities. Foreign countries have internal organizations dedicated to studying the ambiguous threat posed by UAPs, deducing scientific principles through observing UAP, and the careful management of the public perceptions of the UAP issue.
So basically, these other nations also have UFOs that are like the ones we've been seeing. These UFOs seem interested in military and intelligence matters, particularly aerospace defense, strategic nuclear deterrence, and scientific research and development. Other nations have repeatedly tried to shoot down UFOs, and they have their own organizations devoted to studying UFOs, figuring out how they might work, and managing public perceptions of them and the ambiguous threat that they pose.
We now come to the 7th section of the report.
This one deals with sensitive sources, and it is the shortest section of all. It simply says,
Section 7. Sensitive sources. From mouth to ear.
So the report isn't going to spill the beans on what is learned from or about sensitive sources. They'll only report this to Congress from mouth to ear. They're not going to put it in writing.
Finally, the report ends with a conclusion. It states,
The official disclosure of the existence of non-human intelligences and their presence on Earth is a pivotal moment in human history. The nature of this information is of such incomparable relevance to the public good that it demands to be shared. Some may object and say that disclosure at this time poses too many risks. To them, it must be said that we will never be able to predict how individuals, Families, communities, and nations will react to revelations of such magnitude. Moving forward, we must guard against the lure of authoritarian solutions justified by expediency and appeals to national security. The good in humanity will always triumph through time, and it is in moments of crisis that our capacities for achieving the extraordinary are discovered. Be not afraid.
So the author makes an appeal for disclosure of what is known about UFOs. The author warns against authoritarian solutions justified by the fact disclosure has a lot of risks that are at present. They say that we'll never be able to predict how people will react to revelations on a topic this momentous, but that the good in humanity will triumph in time and that we shouldn't be afraid of disclosure. The report then closes with the Latin statement,
Scientia igne probata, veritas perfidum,
which means knowledge is tested through fire and truth is tested through faithfulness.
Jimmy, let's take a brief look at this report from the twin perspectives of faith and reason. First, what would the faith say about it?
Well, not much. Whether God created extraterrestrials is not a matter of the faith. Neither is the idea that he might create interdimensional biological creatures, time travelers, or cryptoterrestrials. In fact, we already know that he created non-biological intelligences in the form of angels. So if he created additional biological forms in somewhere in space and time, that wouldn't challenge the faith.
Then what can we say about the report from the reason perspective? What do you make of it? Do you think it's accurate?
Accuracy can be assessed on different levels. Michael Shellenberger says that he checked out the whistleblower author of the report, and he or she was whom he or she said he or she was in the Defense Department. Other sources have confirmed aspects of the report for Shellenberger, like the existence of Immaculate Constellation. I also assume that members of Congress have also checked this out. So I think that the claim is accurate that the report was written by someone in the Defense Department. Then there's the question of whether the author is reporting things accurately. And here I have less of a basis for judgment because I haven't been able to speak with the author and assess whether he or she seems honest. But Shellenberger thinks that they are. So I have to defer to that and assume that the author did believe what they wrote. I can't rule out the idea that the author is part of a disinformation operation, but I don't have a basis for asserting that the author is. Finally, there's the question of whether the data in the report, that it's based on is accurate. And here I can see two risks. The first is that the data is just due to circular reporting. That is, people are repeating rumors and assuming they're true, even though they have no factual basis. And the second risk is that the data was all faked as part of a disinformation operation, and the author was either led to find the data or accidentally found it. The first of these dangers is eliminated by the fact that, as Shellenberger points out, the data in the report is new. It's not recycling names and dates and stories that we've heard before. It also goes beyond just, accounts of written up rumors. It includes, imagery intelligence and so forth. You can, a film may not be accurate, but if so, it's because it's been faked or something, not because it's a rumor. So I don't think we can just say this is all due to circular reporting. It's not just recycling names and dates and stories we've heard before. So that would leave us with the data either being real or being deliberately faked.
What would you make of the idea that it is a deliberate fake?
Well, I can't rule it out completely, but I do see a significant problem with the idea, which is the fact that the strategy thus far on the part of U.S. military and intelligence communities has been twofold. With respect to people inside the UFO community, they may lie and tell them, oh yeah, we've got all this UFO stuff, like Richard Doty did with Paul Benowitz. We discussed their story in episodes 143 and 144 at mysterious.fm/143 and mysterious.fm/144. However, the military intelligence strategy with respect to people outside the UFO community, such as those in Congress, academia, and the public, has been to downplay and deny anything having to do with UFOs. Like, oh, no, we don't have classified UFO stuff. That's all nonsense. But here, the whistleblower is talking to people in Congress about all this being real, all this hidden stuff, which does not fit the pattern historically of what we've seen. So it doesn't look like a standard disinformation operation. It would be one thing if they were claiming to leak UFO data to a random member of the Mutual UFO Network or MUFON, but leaking fake data to Congress, which is a crime and which will provoke more interest on the part of Congress to want to look into this, would be a really stupid thing to do. So it's not looking like a disinformation operation to me. I mean, maybe it is, maybe they're trying to scare off our enemies or something, but it at least doesn't fit the historical pattern. It's something new.
What do you think is the most significant thing about the report?
It's a fact that it actually gives a name to the reported unacknowledged special access program. The fact we now have the name Immaculate Constellation should, in principle, make it possible to verify or falsify the existence of such a program. Now, they could make it hard by changing the name of the program or by issuing further denials, but if it exists, there's a paper trail on it. And now we have a name that the public can use when filing FOIA requests and that Congress can use in getting its own briefings on the subject. Having a name makes this much clearer, and I'm cautiously optimistic that we may be able to learn more.
Jimmy, what's your bottom line here?
Immaculate Constellation is a reported unacknowledged special access program dealing with UFOs. It reportedly is the parent project of a bunch of daughter projects. It is reported to hoover up and contain image data to prevent it from being more broadly disseminated through the military intelligence network, and it reportedly has not been properly briefed to Congress. All this is based on a report written by an anonymous whistleblower in the Defense Department. The report does appear to be written by the anonymous source in question. Michael Shellenberger finds this source credible, and the data that the report is based on does not appear to be part of a disinformation operation. While this can't be known with certainty, the fact that we now have the name Immaculate Constellation should make it easier to find out if this is true or not.
And Jimmy, what further resources can we offer?
We'll have links to the Immaculate Constellation document on Nancy Mace's House website. We'll also have links to the Black Vault and to the News Nation interview with Michael Shellenberger, as well as the congressional testimony he gave.
Excellent. And now it's time to hear from you. What are your theories about the reported unacknowledged special access program Immaculate Constellation? Let us know by visiting sqpn.com or the Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World Facebook page, sending us an email to feedback@mysterious.fm, sending a tweet to @MYS_world, visiting the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord, or by calling our mysterious feedback line at 619-738-4515. That's 619-738-4515. And I'd like to thank Craig Hart for his voiceover work in today's episode.
And I want to say a special word of thanks to Oasis Studio 7 for the video and animation work they did on this episode. You can check their work out by going to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Jimmy Akin. I'm trying to get up to that at time of recording, the 100,000 subscriber mark, which I'm hopeful will lead YouTube to give the channel a little more respect and share it with other folks. So you can help me get there by liking, commenting, writing a review, sharing the podcast, and especially by subscribing. And when you subscribe, be sure and hit the bell notification so you always get notified whenever I have a new video.
And Jimmy, what's our next episode going to be about?
Next week, we're going to be looking at the history of an aircraft carrier, not a nuclear one, but we'll be looking at the history of the aircraft carrier USS Hornet. It was a very important ship in World War II and the Cold War, and the story has a bunch of surprising turns, including what's happening with the ship now.
Folks, be sure to check out the Mysterious World bookstore at mysteriousworldstore.com for links to all the books and videos that Jimmy mentions in the show. Get your very own Mysterious World t-shirt, mug, and more in our merchandise shop at sqpn.com/merch. You'll find links to Jimmy's resources from our discussion on our show notes at mysterious.fm/351. And remember, to help us continue to produce the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World is also brought to you in part by Rosary Army, featuring award-winning Catholic podcasts, rosary resources, videos, and the School of Mary online community, prayer, and learning platform. Learn how to make them, pray them, and give them away while growing in your faith at rosaryarmy.com and schoolofmary.com. Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World is also brought to you in part through the generous support of Aaron Vergeson Electric and Automation, making connections for life for your automation and smart home needs in North and Central Florida at aaronv.com. Until next time, Jimmy Akin, thank you for exploring with us our mysterious world.
Thanks, Tom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World on StarQuest.